下载央视新闻加。
汪老师，在接下来的这个直播过程中间呢，我们会一起跟随着汪老师带大家去了解一些关于徽墨的知识点。那么现在呢，我所在
During today's live streaming, we will get to know Hui Ying together with Mr. Huang. And now we are locating at Mount Huangshan. It is a very tranquil place. However, in this tranquil place, there hides a very hidden factory manufacturing Hui ink. What's the relation between Hui ink and Hu Kaiwen? There is another name of Hui ink, whose name is Shi Tianzhu. He visited Mount Huangshan when he was 13, and his father-in-law valued his character and let him become an heir of Hui Ying. He is actually the last descendant of Mo clan. There is a long list of Mo clan, however, he's the last one. Let's see that on both sides of this place, we can see the mountains, and the factory was built on top of the mountain because it will be cooler and receive less sunlight. Because in order to dry the Mo ink, you have to dry it in a cool place rather than to face directly to the sunlight. Otherwise, there will be cracks. Let's see this factory with 200 years of history. Now we're looking at the bust of Hu Tianzhu, who's the last descendant of Mo clan. Up till now, the history of this factory is about 254 years. Hu Tianzhu had 8 sons. The reason why this brand can pass on so well, it has a lot to do with the family. Especially, we must attribute to his second son. This factory was founded by his third son. At the starting point of the entrepreneurship of the seventh son, we call that store a very historic store. We know that Hui ink is different from the ink we usually see, because usually we see the watery ink, liquid ink, rather than the ink stick. There are several categories of Mo ink. The first one is oil-soothed ink. However, there are also several grades of the oil-soothed ink. And the second one is pine-soothed ink. And the third one is pine-soothed ink mixer ink. How do we make the Hui ink? Let's look at the first step of the process, which is to ignite the soot. There is a very special technique in igniting the soot, which can date it back to Song Dynasty. However, the historic relic of this technique is not here, but in another province. We see that the windows here are all black. Igniting the soot can determine the quality of the ink. And soot ignition is one of the most important steps of the whole process. Now let's get inside, and we can see even all the walls are black. This is the tool to ignite the soot. Each of that is a lamp. Usually we will use 9 of these to ignite the soot. And up till now, we decided to combine manpower with these tools together. We know that historic technique to ignite the soot won't be conducted every day because it can be dangerous to the manpower, and it's also less effective. Therefore, most of our employees and most people are reluctant to ignite the soot by using the traditional technique. It is a little bit risky to people's health. What is the raw material and ingredients of igniting the soot? The main ingredient or material would be tun oil. Usually there will be 3 to 5 incense inside of the lamp. And we will also use traditional Chinese medicine herb. Usually, our ancestors will use this kind of herb as the raw material of the light. We will burn this incense in the night, and in the daytime we will take it out. How do you take it out? How do you take the soot out? And how long should you burn it? Usually we have 100 lamps, and our people will collect the soot every 1 hour. By the traditional weighing method, 1 liang means 31 grams. If we are going to make 31 grams of ink, how many soot should we collect? even if one employee, burning the incenses for a whole day, 8 hours, you can only collect 150 grams of soot. For this 150 grams of soot, together with the auxiliaries, and for example, the soot materials, oils, glues, how many ink can we make? I'm not sure if our viewers can see this step clearly. Let's zoom in. Usually in the making of Hui ink, we will use tan oil and even some lacquer and some secret materials. Originally, our ancestors would use pine soot. Pine soot can be dated back to East Han Dynasty. Now we are burning pine oil. As you can see that this room, the soot burning room, is quite dark. We specifically brought a light with us. I remember you just introduced that usually we will use tan oils, veg oils, and animal oils to burn the soot. What is this? This is the pine soot. After a pine tree naturally dries out, there is some essence of the pine, and we will collect the pine soot. We know that there are oil soot, pine soot, and lacquer soot. What are the differences among them? Since these raw materials are at different prices, which will lead to the end products at different prices. If you ignite this pine soot, you will see that there are not a lot of oil inside of it, and the ink created by pine soot will be lighter. When the Hui ink is at a lighter color, it will have nice glow. After we have burned the soot, you will also need to add the glues and other materials to make the end product. Yes, glue is required. There are a lot of varieties of glues. For example, animal glues, fish glues, and even some veg glues. This is the herb that we use as the robe inside of the lamb. This is the one we use to burn the soot. Even in the air, there were some gray ashes, making the room quite dark. All of the walls are very dark. after we have collected the soot ash, you have to cool it down and store it for 3 years. Where do you store it? Underground. It is a natural process. This room is quite hot. If we are in the burning room, does it mean that we cannot use any fan or AC system? No. Usually, our workers will wear a mask to burn the soot. My feeling is that even though the factory is quite big, there aren't that many staff here. Yes, all of the inks are mostly for calligraphers and collectors. There are only 30 employees here. The scale of our factory is in accordance with the demand of the market, and we mainly target for premium and high-end customers. Usually, students won't buy our products. Ladies and gentlemen, today's program is live broadcasting on CGTN, NR platforms, and also several other new media platforms. Today we're going to talk about the making of Hui ink sticks. We're in the Valley of Mountains. This is the storage room, and we mainly use the storage room to store soot. It is quite humid. Even the floor is quite dark. The factory was constructed in the last 70s. It is maybe because of that the geolocation of this factory, it is in the Valley of the Mountains. I feel it's quite cool. These are all the soot. This soot should be stored in for 3 years. We have different grades of soot. Level A. This is the level A soot, which means it's the best. How long should you collect to have this huge amount of soot? It takes a very long time, almost 1 month, for one employee to collect the soot. However, since we are using machines to burn the soot now, which increases the efficiency, we even have soot from 2014 and 2015. Now we're looking at the ashes from 2018, and they are kind of grayish. However, the longer you store the soot, the darker the soot gets. How about the soot in the over there? This is from 2005. My mistake. This is actually from 2015. If you touch the soot, you can even feel that it gets more solid. And that is from 2018. Usually, the longer you store the suit,
对对对，最好的越长，做墨就是越好，质量的内在质量越好。
the more premium the suit gets, and the more premium ink you can make.
这边烧，松烟呢一般的在山里面再烧一点。我们这里
We won't burn pine soot here, but in mountainous areas. In our factory, we will only burn oil soot and lacquer soot. These are the lacquer soot that we just burned.
为多我一家烧得起，刚刚烧了一。
Currently, in the ink industry, only our factory
这是讲究，
can afford to burn lacquer soot. This is level A lacquer soot.
刚刚烧好，土漆也刚刚烧掉，这是
Level A, and just
基本上要100几再开始。
this is the just collected level A lacquer suit.
烟目前来讲，做出来的墨呢价位也比较高，
After this step,
因为它是整个同一个价位的10
we will get the ink.
现在30块，它这个升级现在350块钱，
Lacquer suit
成本
is 10 times pricier than the oil suit.
无量发
It's quite costly. However,
色彩图啊，
one of the best advantages of lacquer suit is that
我也了解到，就是
if you use lacquer suit to make ink, the ink will get naturally dark
有可能会
and glowy.
土漆是
I understand that it can be a little bit dangerous to burn the suit. Yes, one can get allergic to the lacquer,
我们讲过敏就是瘙痒、
to the
发痒，
if you have not
对人的身体呢虽然没有危害吧，
been in touch with
这个很难受。
dust lacquer before,
这个土漆
you can get allergic several times after you have touched lacquer.
哎对，它断代了从
This is also one of the reasons that there are not that many people burning lacquer suit anymore,
很想了解我
and people have stopped burning lacquer suit for 500 years.
汉代从北方南迁到南方，
When does
到南方
Hui ink originate?
成为吧，现在
It can be dated back to Han Dynasty and then moved south, then to pass on to Tang Dynasty.
水比较好，
And the factories moved to Huizhou, and
它制作墨
the owner of that factory realized that the oil quality in Huizhou is quite good.
后来因为它
The then emperor attached great importance to the Hui ink. Therefore, Hui ink at that time became emperor
刚
offerings.
刚看了制墨的第一
我
步
们，一个核料
这是我们第二步。
The owner of the factory
这个
then
烟灰
decided
到底
to
是
settle
怎么
down in
变成
Huizhou.
这个墨定的，这是关键的一步。
How can you
油烟、
tran-
松烟，
turn this suit
基本上就是三大类一样。
into the ink stick?
那我们这个
There are several kinds of
这个是
suit,
这个是可以使用的松烟，炭
and if you see, if you look around,
让大家
you
感
can
受
see
一下
that。these are the pine suits.
对对，而且把它晾干，松烟，
这油已经敞开
We
了
have already stored this suit for several years.
看在地上的就是松烟，松烟呢就是让我们经过要筛过，啊，要
All of these suit on the ground
过
are pine suit
对，
because
这样子呢就是
we
这个墨
require
做成墨之后
screening
没有杂质，不会损坏这个
a screening process before the making of ink. Otherwise, there will be some pigments.
我在这里能够闻到一种
This process is to purify the ink.
但现在松烟我们基本上在山里面烧，不在厂里面烧。
I smell a scent of mint.
环境污染各方面。
That is actually the aroma of the pine oil.
过来的话，有可能觉得画面有点黑，因为这个地方像黑的实在是光线不太好。
Dear viewers, you might feel that it looks very dark here, but it is all because of the light we are getting from the room.
再来和料，它这个料里面已经都加了许多的这个材料已经进去了。
In the mixing process, the first step is to make the glue. What kind of materials do we have to make the glue? We will have traditional Chinese medicine, herbs, as well as Borneo. Why do we need to add Borneo? It's to add the aroma. And the traditional Chinese medicine is to anti-rot and adding the humidity as well as the color. We are now currently making the glue.
这个胶呢，一般来讲呢，我们只是用的是工业用。
Is it industrial glue?
产品配什么胶？
Yes,
其实我
this
知
is
道我们这
industrial
个灰
glue.
墨以前啊，它在除了能
Different
够书写，它其实还有
products
药
will
的，
pair up with
就
different
是因为我们
glues.
这里边
专门是药墨。
We know that originally we won't only use this ink
辅助品。
to write or paint. We will also use it as a medicine.
对，哎，对。
Yes, it can be a medicine auxiliary.
3个小时的溶胶。
The reason of that is because we have added a lot of precious traditional Chinese medicine inside of the
再涌
ink,
入进去，再调料。
especially during the making of the glue.
这个中药等一下我们到那个博物馆可以看到那个有许多。哎，这个
What kind of traditional Chinese medicines are included?
像这个皮胶呢，就是讲一般的。
This is skin glue.
饰品用胶啊。
It is all very pigmental.
哎，对对对对对对对。
Usually, this kind of glue will be included in food.
我们这个配方
It is edible.
就是根据各个墨，比如说药墨，那是要求格外严格一些，啊，要求。
Our formula
哎，对，这个就是骨胶。
will be different
骨胶，骨头，对对对。
if the product is different.
啊，这个皮胶，哎，是皮
This
胶。
glue is the bone glue,
白色粉末。
and that one is the skin glue.
鳞片呢，在古代呢也叫龙脑。
How about the white powder?
哎，对对。
That
实际
is
就是
actually
它就是中药。
the Borneo.
那它马上就是。
Traditionally,
调好之后，
our ancestors call Borneo
这个
the dragon head. After the glue is made,
让我们的
we will
这个
mix
师
all
傅
of these
在工作的过程中要
ingredients
全部
together.
武装起来，从帽子、口罩到手套、鞋子、长裤、
You
长
see
袜
that
衫。
the worker is
全场是最脏最累的一个。
fully equipped. He's wearing long sleeves
熬出来胶又经过过滤。
of clothing
啊，你就生怕
and
它里面
wearing
有杂质
mask as well as
有
hat.
杂质
After the glue
一般
is
的就是
made,
它融入下去就行
you will have to
这个
screen
筛子啊筛子一般的
the
融入
glue.
下去那个渣子不流下去。
How long does it take? As long as it's passing down the filter, all of the pediments will be filtered.
这个都有配比啊，每一种墨它这个2种墨就2种配比。
There is a ratio of different raw materials, right? Yes.
中药它有11种
There are
中药
two ratios
丁
here.
香啊，这个
What kind
枸
of
杞啊
medicines will be added?
这个芭蕉啊，
There are 11 traditional Chinese medicines
马梅
being
第
added.
2个就是增加它的湿度，我将在讲的。
What is
它的湿度？
The function of these medicines to add the humidity and to anti-rot, as well as it is very aromatic.
中药呢还不能在这里配，有些中药如果像
All of the aroma from the ink come from these medicines and herbs. Sometimes for the precious traditional Chinese medicines, we won't add them here in this step, but we will add them later. We know that the formula is a secret. We won't be able to know the ratio of the formula because it's your core technique. Currently, this formula is a national secret. I heard about Hui ink stick before. However, I didn't know that one should add traditional Chinese medicine and valuable herbs inside it. After you mix all of these raw materials, you will make a dough out of it, and then you will need to use a hammer to knock the dough. Can I try? Is there any technique in when you stir this mixture? Anti-clock or clockwise are all fine. Deep down there is the glue we just made. It is still very difficult to stir the mixture. You have to be very careful, otherwise the suit or the mixture might spill out. I'll give it back to you. Can you teach me? Usually, this stirring process should take 15 to 20 minutes. After the mixture is made, a dough will be made out of the mixture. Later on, I will show you how to make the ink. From the camera, you can see that there are a lot of ashes or soot flowing when you stir it. That's why the worker is wearing a mask. How many ink sticks can be made out of this mixture? Around 5 jin. Usually for a good quality ink stick, we won't use a big pot to mix the mixture because currently we are making a medium or high-end ink stick. Therefore, we will use a smaller container to stir the mixture. Can we see the dough? As we can see, the dough is in the making. Sometimes we will use a machine to stir the mixture better. Now you can see the ingredients are integrated. However, after the stirring of this, we might still need to put it into the machine to stir it again. Mixing is also an important step. It can also determine the quality of the ink stick. To determine how good the worker is during the mixing process, and also the formula quality can determine the quality of the ink stick. Back in the 80s, the government has already set the standard of ink stick.
制定了一个新的标准。
And I remember 2 years ago there is an updated
比
standard.
以前的标准可能要严格一些吧，严格一些。这个从
And the
今
new
年的6月1
standard
号
is
开始
more
执行
rigid than the old
墨汁的
one.
标准啊，包括我们这个木质的标准。
Starting from the 1st of June,
6月1号开始执行。
all of the making of the ink stick, and glue
师傅在这里
should be in accordance with the new standard. Now I'm holding a hammer. The hammer is quite dark and it got my hand
干的主要原因也就在这里，又沾又累。
very dark. This is also one of the
现在点击
reasons
我们的直播还不知道我们现在
why
正在做的是
young
什么
people
我们
are
现在带大家
reluctant
看
to
的
be
是
the
国家
worker
级非
of
遗徽墨的制作过程。
making
现在呢
ink
是
stick.
徽墨的制作的第2步，制作这个墨团。
Ladies and
还要把
gentlemen,
烟
just
灰
remind
和
you
我们的
we
这
are
个熬好的这
currently
个骨胶，还有
live
配好的这个
broadcasting
中
the
药的这个
making
制剂
process of
一
ink
起合成
stick,
墨团。
and
现
this
在
is
大
the
概大家
second
已经
step.
能够看出
We
来
are
墨
mixing
团已经有
the
了
raw
这个
materials,
雏形了。
including the
我们现
suit,
在的直播的这个
traditional
平台
Chinese
呢，有
medicine
央视
herbs
新闻客户
together,
端、央视新闻移
and
动
the
网、
dough,
央
the
视新闻新
dough
浪微博、
is
央
almost
视新闻
down.
今日头条，
Today's
以及我们联合央广
program
中
will
国之
be
声的
live
微博共同为大家
broadcasted
推出的这场直
in
播。如果大家在这个过程中
Toutiao.com,
对我们的徽墨呢有什么
ANR,
问题的话，可以
CGTN,
提出
CCTV,
来，我们
and
可以请
several
我们
new
的
media
汪培
platforms.
坤老
If
师
you
呢给
have
大家解
any
答。
questions, please do not hesitate to leave it in the comment section, and we will ask our expert to answer them.
让他这个中国通过千锤百炼嘛，我们为什么墨角10万出？
Now
这是一个第一个。
we have made the dough and need to use a hammer to knock it. It is said that 10,000 of knocks
现在上滚机上
is required.
滚一下之后，对，做成木果，再
How many knocks is required? Let's not talk about this any
这个不要
before
紧
the machine stirring.
对，它这个搅拌好了，就在那个机器上去
Do you need to steam the dough?
把它机器上碾细。
Steaming is not required because after the mixing or stirring of this
我们
mixture,
现在看到的这些
we
还
will
是最
leave
终
it to the machine.
收集烟尘
我们水讲合料，
这个合料。
对。
We are currently still looking at the most
对。
two basic steps.
今天的天气非常的
Let's go to see the next step.
厂里咱们这些车间里边好像都没有一些这个
Today it's quite hot.
有啊。
However, I realize
特那里
that there aren't any AC system
一般
or fans.
凌晨，
Actually, we do have in the production line.
它
Usually, in the ancient times, our ancestors will start making inks
第二个你做起来的墨的
at 3 o'clock in the morning
热对墨的质量
because during the summer times it is too hot. The temperature might interfere with the quality of the ink.
有粒子
You might not be able to get the ink outside the
每个
tools
手边都装的空
due to the high temperature.
这样子呢，它就不存在
You might even get bubbles from the ink.
一般的就是做墨的
That's why we have mounted AC systems in the production line, so to
这个
keep a fixed room temperature
一
at
种实践经
20.
验当中积累出来的。虽然这个墨厂为什么在这个地方，
From the experience of our
这
ancestors,
个山里面比较凉
we realized that
凉快一点，
a fixed temperature
空气的温度啊比外面的
is a must.
来讲要低。
And that is also the reason why we set up the factory here in the mountains, because it's cooler.
你等一下就看得出来这墨的效果。
When I
还没有锤
looked
换
at
新
the
鲜
dough,
墨泥刚刚调好，还没经过千锤百炼。墨为什么
I
10万
won't even recognize it as
稀了，含均匀了？
as the dough of the ink stick
它的质地还是很软的，一捏就。但是
because it's not ready.
墨定为什么就非常的坚硬？
墨定出来之后，它主要经过晾干了，
when I knead it
之后这个
or rub it, I realized that the dough is quite soft. Why is the
又说
ink stick
烘干嘛，它
quite stiff?
因为它是胶的，
Because you have to dry out. After the drying, it gets stiffer,
这里面就是自摸，
and you have to dry it out naturally.
对，
This is the ink making production line.
这个车间里边儿
这个就是
有很多的工具。
一进来就感觉到，哎，对，它都
In
是空
this-
调，有空调，它一般的温度就保持在20。
In this room, we see a lot of equipment and it's cooler. Usually the temperature should be at 20 Celsius. This is the dough after steaming.
可以用手摸一摸吗？
It looks like a kind of food. Is it very hot? Yes. You can touch it
其实捏起来
and feel the temperature.
比我们普通的
It's
这
still very hot.
有韧性很多。
It's quite resilient.
把它蒸软一点，蒸软一点时候才能做。
Why do you put the dough here?
一块一块的块状型，你们可能我拿一块那个给你看一下。
As you can see, the dough we just made in the previous room, they are not quite ready yet. That's why we are polishing the dough here.
下面捶打好，就是这个。
刚才在下面捶打好，
对对对，哎对，就这样子上来。
This is
上来之后
the
在
dough
做的时候
after the knocking or kneading.
蒸啊，加上水温度，它这个特别，这个硬啊，它已经干了，已经干了。模拟已经因为胶嘛，它有胶。
Firstly, you will have to steam it
干
because it's quite stiff. There are glue inside it. After dry out, it can be very stiff. It's very hard. One has to steam it after it's softened. Then you can make the ink.
我们这里就是不同的师傅做不同的墨，这个就是墨。
These are all the ink dough. Each worker has different responsibilities.
保温主要起到保温作用。
看了一下，我觉得这个每个车间的
I noticed that you need to cover the dough. Yes, that is to
如果要出
reserve the temperature.
你讲量很少，就是这样。一般我们这里都做中高档，中高档。如果你要做一般
You cannot make a lot of ink each time, right? Yes, because we are targeting at high-end market. We are not using pine su to make the ink. We are making a very high-end ink. The quantity is small.
它这个8斤也是有这个标准。
有标准，
The hammer also weighs 8 jing.
这个古代传下来。
That is also in compliance with the standard.
这个墨钉
Yes.
都是在这样的木头桩上边儿，用这个好像有点像那个锤子哦，锤打出来。
这个
你可以试
All
一
of
下
the
捶打一下
ink
然后
stick
感受一下。
should be knocked here. You can have a try.
定墨要经过10万处。
就直接这样拿下去。
Each ink stick should be knocked 10,000 times. What oil did you just put
汪老
on?
师虽然今年
That is actually
年纪
veg
大
oil.
我感觉用锤子的这个还是很熟练。
Although Mr. Mr. Wang is not young, he's still quite skilled and experienced in knocking the dough.
细腻一点，做成墨呢就是
Why do you need to knock it
做挺一点就比较好看一点啊，直观上比较好。
You need to make the dough
比方说我
more
想要什么
solid,
样的一个程度，
looks
它是
more beautiful, and squeeze out all of the bubbles inside the dough.
要垂直着下，
确实很重。
这个没有固定的标准，就是说我一定要
自己掌控。
完全这个标准就是在
How do we know that the dough is ready?
如果
Depends on yourself or the experience of the worker.
看看他那个
We have a very experienced worker here, and he's going to give you a demonstration. He's going to knock a very big dough.
我
Firstly,
我这一路看下来，
you
我觉得
need to
微波
put
的这
some
个过程
oil
实际上和我们做
on
这个
top
食
of
物有点儿异曲同工的这种感觉。
是有一点，
on top of it.
这个是
I noticed that the making of Hui ink stick, it's similar to the making of some of the food.
这个就是菜籽油就行，菜籽油，菜籽油它一般的就是
Does it have to be veg
不
oil?
沾手也不沾台板。
Yes, usually we use linseed oil because it's not sticky. It won't stick to your hand or to the platform.
文房四宝
It takes a lot of energy and effort to knock the dough.
实际都是一种体力活，体力活。
In terms of the four treasures of the study, each treasures would require a lot of effort. How many hours do you work? 7 hours per day. Do you have to knock the dough for 7 hours? Will you feel very tired? Yes, but I'm used to it.
做了4
I've been in this area for 15 years.
这个老师傅呢，就是目前
We also have one worker who's been working here for 40 years.
工作了40年，
That is him.
他这里做的
He's
是形模
the only one
圆柱模，
我看师傅在把这个木
who has 40 years experience
摆在这里塌下去，
in our factory.
包起来的
And
吊起来的
currently,
平杆呢，
he's
这个木头
making
保持圆度，
the
保持
非常的
圆度
讲究。
哎，对对，
column-shaped ink stick. You have to
它
cover
那个是
the
计量的，哎，
ink
这个
stick
计
with
量
paper
一定木啊，根据各种1、2
to
2
ensure the
计
shape.
量要标准，有标准。
助形墨是到时候
The ratio or the dosage of each raw material
柱形墨一般的就是比
is
较
all
实用
set,
它没有表面的有纹丝啊，
and there is a standard of
还
it.
是主要是实用的，还是实用型的。对
What's the strength of
哎，那个是
the column-shaped ink stick?
一般的来讲呢，
It's
就是
very
如果是
pragmatic.
一个内在质量好啊，这个内在质量第二个
However, the
啊，这一般的墨呢，
rectangular-shaped stick has a higher collective value.
压力机这个是改进了、改良了。原来最早的
What's
时候
this?
90年代还是用杠杆
This is the grinding machine
杠杆圆，
and is an improved version.
靠它的重量
I remember that we have an older
我相信很
version
多
back
人
in the
应该跟我一样都
90s,
是第一次
and
见
that is a very basic
这个
one.
机器，这个是以前用的这个。
I'm sure a lot of viewers,
您指的最老是大概是
this
什
is
么
the first time for a lot of viewers to see this kind of equipment or facilities. Before the 80s, we are using these kind of tools.
这个
墨就压下去了。
压把这个墨压
哎哎，对对对，
How do you use it? Firstly, the worker will sit on top of here,
最早的
哎，我们叫墨弹，对对对
叫墨弹。
对对对，1弹2弹。所以你
and this is
行业里
the
你有几个弹
earliest tools
的量是多少？
from our ancestors.
比如讲你，对，如果有5个
And
蛋，
this is to
8个蛋
weigh
那
the
就
ink.
多了，那2个蛋，那就你这个企业就小了。哎，这个是第二代
Usually, our ancestors,
这个就是磨模。
in our ancestors' factory, if there are a lot of this kind of
一般来
ways,
讲它这个磨泥
it will mean that we are making more inks.
就是把这个磨泥呢
This is the grounder.
这里面去，摆到这里面这个磨框里面。
Firstly,
再把它
we
压
will put
压了
the
之后呢，
ink
摆到
dough inside it,
压力机上再给它成型。
and then
对，花纹。
you will ground it. Then it becomes the shape of the mold, and it is engraved.
可以啊，像我们师傅一样。
All of these ink sticks are engraved. Can you demonstrate for us? Yes, currently he's kneading the dough and make it in column shape. Later on, he will put it into the mold.
这个是1两的磨。
What's the weight of the dough here?
31克
It's
为什么
around
是这个
40
呢因为它
grams.
里面含有水分，干了之后它就
Actually, it's 31 grams. We are about to make a 31-gram ink stick. However, why it's the actual weight 40 grams? It is because there are still some waters inside it. After it dry out, it will become 31 grams. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll remind you again, we are not making food, but we are making
定型。
a national intangible cultural heritage
度的话不能保持20度，或者是
item
像今天这个天气，
Hui ink
压
stick.
出来这个沫表面的沫它就脱不
If
下
the
来，
temperature cannot be fixed at 20,
或者是沫的
Celsius,
表面有许多
then we
气泡
won't be able to scratch the ink stick out from the tools, and there will be
有
bubbles.
的。古代人这就半夜就是3点钟起来，一直做
We
到
know that
半夜
now we are using AC system to
就
fix the temperature. What about in the ancient times? How do they maintain the temperature? They won't be able to use the modern technology. Therefore, they would have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to make the ink stick,
咱们中国的这个文房四宝之一的这个
or in the evening when the temperature is not that high.
各种艺术
As one of the 4 treasuries of the study,
更多的还是用体力的。
the Hui ink stick can be used to paint, to write, and etc. However, to make the Hui ink stick, it requires a lot of manpower's effort.
这个图案怎么来的？就是这个木头吗？
首先它就要设计。
We are now still making some pragmatic ink stick, but if you want to make a ink stick that has a lot of collectible value, then it requires more processes. What is it doing now? As you can see that all of the patterns or engraves on the ink stick, those are all carved. How old is the oldest wood plate? Some of the wood plate can be dated back to Qing Dynasty, which is the founder of the factory.
那边是朱砂。
It also requires technique to carve the wood mold. However, the wood mold room is closed. We have more than 10,000 molds and 2,000 categories. some of the mold
有的就是讲我们挺大的
only has 20
很少。
number quantities.
这我们从楼上先亮墨，直墨做好之后亮墨。雕刻
Some of the wood mold can be considered as an antique.
模的花纹里，对对。这个模具都是人工雕刻出来的，
This is the room
人工雕刻。
where we make the wood mold.
它没有
This is all man-made.
一般我们这个墨是有正反面嘛，
它这个墨有一个词，
You cannot use any machine to replace
四面的都讲。
the manpower. It has to be engraved or carved by people.
这面
就是有字的是一个正面。
也不一定有字的就这样。
This is the bottom and this is the lid or top. There are different designs of
外面还有墨
the mold.
墨框，质底呢是我们当地出的一种石兰墨。
There are even a mold frame
对
outside the wood mold.
这种
And we are using local wood to make this wood mold. It's quite rarely seen.
阳光，虽然它几十年之后，
And those kind of wood or tree will only grow in humid areas with very rare sunlight. And the tree cannot
都是
grow very big.
这是我们
The wood quality is very solid.
他已经雕了30年。现在
She has been
学这种
in this area for
缺乏这
more than 30 years and
对。
she has a master degree in fine arts.
为什么就是讲，缺乏
We really need more talents like her.
懂得书法，懂得书画，在那模具在那这
Why is that? Because this kind of talent will have to know calligraphy, fine arts, and sculpture.
主要就是把它刮平，它这个用单刀把它线条刻好之后啊，旁边就把底子把它铲掉，铲到一定的深度，
She is
这是
sculpting
阳纹，
the bottom of the wood to make it
阴的
flatter.
便于填金。
特别想看一下您说的那个从清代的时候流传下来的那些木到底长什么样，我们能看一眼。这个是秘密。
等一下我们到博
I
物馆
would really like to see the wood mold that can be dated back to Qing Dynasty. We also have some wood mold collected in the museum, and you can see it there. These are all wood molds. But this is before engraving.
这个木模呢必须要就是设计好图案，再给它雕。
This wood mold has to be designed in advance. After you have designed the pattern, then
这个没有螺丝的，
the designer can start to engrave or carve it.
要卡住，
There is no screws at all.
比较帅。
Yes, we are using traditional Chinese technique.
你所指的是什么？
And the reason why we are using the tenon rather than screw is because we don't want to show
胶
and we want to make the whole wood mold seamless.
沉着，层次比较好。
Old ink will have a better visualization or presentation.
在那里。
Now let's go to the dry out room.
我叫他把那个仓库门开。
Where is the storage room of the wood mold? It's over there. I'll need to ask someone to open the door.
我们一般的木模仓库呢是不对外开放。你等一下，我叫。
So the storage room is not opened to the public.
我们木模的这个
Yes.
储存条件也有限制的，一般的温度呢也在20度左右。
What's the storage terms to store this wood mold?
因为温度太高了，
Usually the temperature should be around 20 Celsius
变形开裂。
because if the temperature goes too high, the shape of the wood mold will be interfered.
也不能讲就是讲现在雕刻呢就是。
Can we
不过像
still use those wood mold from Qing Dynasty
大师通过10几20年的磨练，才能达到这个效果。
to
现在很多的这个木模
because to make a sculpture artist, it takes
磨一般都是人家定版，就是画
more than 20 years.
自己画自己设计啊。
So to sculpture or carve the wood mold from Qing Dynasty, it requires a very high skill.
流传下来的这些木模呢，现在是只能有收藏的价值，就是没有办法我们再拿它出来做墨。
For the
是这样子，它
wood mold from Qing Dynasty,
几十年之后
they won't be,
来做的，
we won't be able to use them.
它就是
We only collect them
一列，
and look for the
后来它有测
collectible value.
保护这个磨的模型。
最新价的全部都是我们制作徽墨的模具。
You will even need to apply some oil on top of the old wood mold, otherwise it can crack.
图案的名称，我们
This is the wood mold room.
看到这个窗帘儿都是拉起来的。
And now you are looking at the
窗帘拉起来
names of the
主要是
pattern.
背光它背光不给它这个太阳直晒。
哦，模具的保存。
对，
I noticed that you have closed all of the curtains. Yes, this is to prevent the sunlight in order to protect the molds.
这个实事求是，像这种模具呢，就是都是以前古代人，
There are a lot of interesting names.
也有老板模具。老板模具我们现在一般的是不用的。
徽墨
A lot of names
文化
are from our ancestors.
在这个
木模上面是。下面
The culture
感受到
behind Hui ink stick is symbolized on the name of the wood mold.
各个历史时期的哪个是时间最长的？
These are all the wood molds from different times. What's the oldest one? This is the oldest one. It's from Qing Dynasty. And it's the most valuable one. We will only use it every several decades. Every several decades, we will apply some oil and water on top of it so that to preserve it. Why cannot use it all the time? Usually, a mold can only be used for 500 sets of ink stick. Therefore, the life cycle of the wood mold is very short, especially in the ancient times. So the wood mold is very valuable. Take this one as an example. The design of the pattern of this wood mold is only one. which means it's even more valuable. Usually, the reason why we use it is not because we really need to use it, but because we need to preserve it, so to prevent it from cracking. When is the last time you use it? That is from the 70s or last 80s. This mold is the work from a very famous artist in Qing Dynasty. It's the joint effort of various famous artists. You might not be able to see it clearly, but on top of it, there is engraved houses, and then that is the West Lake, as well as the sceneries along the West Lake. That is the top, and if you see the bottom, you will see some poems. You see that this is the calligraphy of the poems. Where can we see this set of ink stick? There are still several ink sticks preserved in the museum. Later you will see. I see there are a lot of ashes on the wood mold. Actually, the frame or cover of the mold is made additionally, and the frame can be rotten very easily. Therefore, we are using some special medicine to prevent it from rotting. Currently, in our factory, we only have 100 sets of wood mold that is as valuable as one like this. Especially for the wood mold from Qing Dynasty, we will store specifically in some separate area. Usually, we will specify the information of the wood mold on the shelf. For example, the time, the factory, and the version of the wood mold. We will make a copy of the design pattern and stick it on the shelf. By these methods, one can be able to locate this wood mold easily. Now we're looking at the wood mold from the Republic area. As you can see on the label, it's all written very clearly. However, if a fan or tourist visit this place, it will still takes him 1 year to be able to understand what it means on the label. So the ink can also be seen as the record of the history, yes. We are using different forms to praise the current event in the history, and wood mold is one of them. This mold is the only one in the world. There are hundreds of characters engraved in the mold, as you can see. These are
除了有
all
美化这个图案的这个
the
作用，
only
还有
one
其他
left
的
in the
视觉
world.
作用。
Apart from increasing the aesthetic beauty of the ink stick, and also record the history, there are also more functions of the wood mold. Actually, wood mold is one of the forms to record the history. One will also use calligraphy, painting, and other forms to record the history. This is the 64 ink stick. It is a whole set. There is a very famous artist dating back at that time who used to work at the Summer Palace, and he remembered all of the scenic and the beauty of the Summer Palace. And after he's finished his work at the Summer Palace, he went to our factory and engraved all of the beauties of the Summer Palace on the wood mold. There are also different styles of wood mold. For example, take Hu Kaiwen's style. It's like this. For example, the top is round. The design of the structure is also very unique. This is a wave shaped, and then this is the rectangular shape. This is the most complicated shape. Currently in the world, there are also still just several ink sticks left that's made from this wood mold. This wood stick is the most valuable one in our factory.
非常的精美。
I'll open it and show you.
所以说我们这个现在是我进厂20多年没有做过，就没有办法修复啊，你修复出来是有痕迹。
It's very exquisite.
是没有办法修复的，这是一个珍贵的资料，绝版了。如果你在现在翻刻的话，
However, it's broken here, and we won't be able to restore
看
it.
这一个墨的话呢，你看的是一个平
It is also the one and only one in the world.
一个很平的一个平面材，
If you want to copy it,
这个是个平面雕刻，我们还可以看。
it is definitely impossible.
这个有这个文字，我们文字的地方呢，
For some complicated ink stick,
或者是各个景点啊，或者是每个地方，
you can
这个呢
even see the
描述它景点的这个各个里面。
5 different types of engraves or cards.
和这个景观呢完全融合在一起啊，还有更复杂的话就是
Some is the scenic spot, some is the architecture, and some is calligraphies. Take this one as example. It's a combination of calligraphy and the scenery. Now let's see this one.
雕虽然是方寸之间，但是它的雕法呢是分了很多层，1层、2层、3层、4层、5层，
就是它这个凹痕，有些凹痕特别深。
对比方说你前面有奖章啊，奖章前面
Although the size of it is very small, you can still
方寸之间啊，
tell the different layers
制的这个雕刻方式啊，
of the graves.
层次感。
Some of them is deeper, some of them is the grasses or bamboos, some of them are buildings. From the details of these graves, you can see
现
the
在特别想看一看
the
这
layers
套
difference.
它到底的真面目是什么样的。
Our ancestors were able to make 5 layers of engraves. However, now no one can make
磨做完的这个墨，
that many layers
是的
anymore.
是因为我刚刚看这个，我们这个墨还是很软的，但实际上我们的灰墨它还是
Now let's move forward to our next stop.
要半年到1年的时间。
After one has made the ink stick, you cannot use it immediately because
什么地方应该
if you go to the market, you will see that the ink stick is quite stiff. However, the one that's just out of the factory,
我现在大概了解了一下
the ink stick will be very soft.
收下来要
You have to store it in a cool and dry place.
等于说我们这一定墨从生产到最后，我们能
Now let's go to the dry out workshop.
看这个
So after you have collected the suit, you have to store it for 3 years, and you will also need to
这个声音
store the ink stick for a few times
声音呢，
for 2 years. Therefore, in order to make the end product of ink stick, it takes 5 years. Yes. How can you tell if the ink stick is ready? You can knock it and hear the sound out of it. If it is very solid and crispy, it means the ink stick is ready and it's completely dried out. Otherwise, you will have to continue to dry it.
它有翘，要翘起。
How many times or how often will you go check on the ink stick? We will check it every 2
这
months.
个车间我就能闻到一股
The reason why is that is because otherwise the shape might be affected.
不断地要翻，每天要不断地翻，一天要翻。
The moment I step into this workshop, I can smell the aroma of the ink.
我们的墨都是
You have to turn them around every day,
晾干，晾干，
every morning and every afternoon.
那不行。温度一般的就讲，
All of our ink stick
我们基本上用
are dry out in a cool room like this. What's the temperature?
天气比较霉嘛。
It should be in a humid
如果你不抽的
humid
话
weather.
空气不抽的话，这个墨
You will have to
里面从里面烂出来。
use some machine to humidify the room.
因为灰墨它是我们国家
Otherwise, this ink stick will get rotten from the inside.
它到目前为止，它是一个工序，全部还是靠手工的。而且
We know that Hui ink stick is listed as our national intangible cultural heritage. Why is that? It's because the technique to make the Hui ink stick is very complicated and it requires
不是能机械化
only manpowers rather than machines. It requires only
那这个一般的
labors.
声音，这个是不过的声音，
Machines cannot replace it.
声音是发脆的，发脆的，这个就是没有干。
Take this ink stick as example. Let's see if it is ready or not. Let's hear the sound.
晾干。
The sound is not crispy, so it's not
晾
ready.
干呢，我们就是这里一般的也晾成4到5
The sound of it is quite dummy.
成干了之后，就把
It
它
means
另外一个铺里面去，让它
These two ink sticks are not dry out completely.
放心的，还有定版的。
我有一个问题很好奇，它所有的墨
When the ink sticks is 40% dry, we will put them in another room to continue drying.
这个基本上没有。
I've got a question. Do all the ink sticks have to be dried out here? Yes.
换之后呢，2、3个月
However,
2、3个
since all of the ink sticks should be dried out here, will this room not enough? We won't have a problem like that. Let's go to see the other storage room. In this room, we have the ink sticks that is 50% dry. Now the sound is crispier. Can you knock again? Yes, if the sound is crispy, it means the ink stick is ready. Then we will package them and leave them here for 2 months. Then turn them around again and see how dry they are. You just have to turn them around every day. You will also have to polish the
在
lines
修边
and
在这里
make it absorb water.
这里又在修边，这里在修边。
Now we are polishing the line in this room.
在那个车间去看，对。他长年累月的不断
She
地
is
在修
polishing the
边
line.
这个错啊，把这个台子
Why is it red? Because this is vermilion ink.
它这个墨做好之后不是有毛边嘛？毛边要经过人工整理，给它边把它搓一下。
我们现在看到的这个应该是朱砂。
We will send complete
对
ink
这
stick
个基本
to this
上
room
是皇帝
and
乾
the
隆
workers here will polish
画
it.
家丁万
Now
家
we are looking at the vermilion ink.
这个
It's a special ink stick. Usually, in the ancient times, only the famous artists or the emperors will use vermilion ink
就这个是
to seal. After the polishing, does it mean that
其他的描金
they are ready? Not yet.
是用绘画颜料啊，这是来给它装饰，用金啊银啊，最好的
You will also need to color the top of the
它就是
ink stick. Sometimes we use gold, sometimes we use silver.
把它洗了之后它发亮，再去描金，这样子的保持这个
还要再把它洗湿呢？
洗湿之后
After the dry out of this ink stick,
亮一点，亮一点，
we will wash them and then
那我们干脆就不要晾太干。
decorate them.
那不晾太干，
Why do you need to
潮湿的话呢，就是这样，
clean them with water after dry out? Because
一样要把它整体的内部全部晾干，
哎，
自然晾干。然后我们现在只是把
it will make them glowy. What if we just don't dry them out completely and decorate them directly?
木啊，
No, that's different because
要冷水啊，
this cleaning process is to wipe the surface of the ink stick. But the drying out is a complete
它
process
晾干了，
from the inside to the outside.
它的质地硬度一般的在
And you have to use
2度左右，我有2度左右，
mild
室内的2度左右，
temperature water to
2度左右。
wipe or clean
室
the
内的
surface
温度一般
of
的
the
是
ink
6
stick.
度到4点5度。哎，对，如果是这个墨呢，太软了又不行，啊，太硬了又。
When we talk about the stiffness of the ink stick, it's usually at 2.
一般的讲墨的这个硬
If it is too soft, it won't work. But it is too stiff, it might
啊
do harm to the
如果不能达到2度左右的时候，
inkstone.
就不能成为
Therefore, the stiffness should be 2 or 2.2.
啊，那就没有办法了。
这个硬度基本上是达到规模玉手就能够融化那种。
是。
What is the stiffness of the inkstone? The inkstone has to be more than 2. Otherwise,
有一个测试，还有一个
it's softer than the ink stick.
每一个步骤都是有
这里就是描金。
We will also have a test.
基本上就已经
This is the decoration room. You can see that in this room, most of the ink sticks are almost ready.
这是金粉，这个是红金，这个是黄金，
真金的吗？
这不是真金，
There are several
这不是真金，就跟
color inks.
这个是红
This is gold powder.
红的，这是银
Are they real gold? Not really.
金粉就真
This is gold foil powder, and the other one
对，有真正的
is
金粉
bronze
一般的就是
foil powder.
金子给它
We also have silver powder. do you also use real gold powder?
大
Yes.
墨上能够使用这种金粉，真金粉。
To make the real gold powder, we will ground the
这个
gold.
是真金，对对。
Only in high-end ink
描好
stick
之
we
后
will use
到那时候它干了
real
之后
gold
再把它
powder.
擦
These are all real
这
gold.
个金粉就能更为体现这是真金了。
After the decoration and dry out,
描金仅仅是一个装饰，对。
we will wipe
对
the
关
surface
键体现
again,
在还是在
and
墨
then
的
you
内
will
在
see
质
the
量上
beauty of the gold
书法家
powder.
用的还在体现在墨的内在质量上。如果你的内在质量不行，那你这个墨描金花这么许多功夫，那就没有什么意思了，啊。但像这种东西呢，一般的都是属于实
The
用，啊，只有
intrinsic
机井墨、
quality
好墨，啊，它是属于
is the most important character that calligraphers value. It is not the decoration.
那不影响，不影响。它这个
I've got one question.
比较黑啊，一般的来讲，你这么一点金粉也
We see that there are a lot of colors on top of the ink stick. Does it interfere
是也有的墨
with the writing? No, not really. Usually,
真金呢撒在表面
The gold powder is
无非就是好
in
好看
a very small amount. It doesn't interfere with the writing. Sometimes we will also use some gold powder and just put them on top of the ink stick to make it more beautiful.
这套墨我是03年设计的，这套墨叫徽州人家。
If you look at this ink stick, this is a whole set of ink sticks.
这个就是我们
I designed this ink stick at 2003.
这个体现竹雕，啊，这个体现一个竹子一样的竹节一样的竹雕，这个体现的就是一个砖雕，而且旁边都有。
The other one, this one shows the bamboo sculpture. The other one shows wood sculpture, and this one shows brick sculpture.
就是我们徽州人家里面
We also have stone sculpture,
还有都有这些
which is this one.
砖雕啊、石雕啊、木雕啊、土雕啊都有这些东西。我把它组合在一起。
Usually in Huizhou, especially in the old houses, old households, they all have this kind of ink wood.
制作的过程。
Some have
我们已经看到了制作好的徽墨。
stone, some have
就是
brick
徽州
sculptures.
一般的徽州老
Now we have seen the making process of Hui ink stick, and we are now looking at the end product. This is
这个一般的都是人
a
家收藏的，但是你使用
classical
一般来讲，人家不舍得使，
door head.
使用的嘛就比较简单一些，简单一些。
It,
我们在那个木
it is only for collection. We won't really use it.
藏了很多的珍贵的那个徽墨。
If you want to use ink stick,
就是在我们
you will go for a simpler design.
这里有一个徽墨的博物馆，这里收藏了很多的。
I know that in our factory, you have a lot of precious
博物馆呢有
historic ink sticks
这徽墨的一种文化嘛，
in your collection. And now let's go to the museum.
绘画的展示。
This museum serves as a promoter of Huizhou culture, and it's open to public.
在这里我们能看到有多珍贵的徽墨。
这里大概有
Let's go
100
upstairs.
我们整个因为博物馆体量很小，特别是我们
What kind of precious
还没
Hui ink sticks will we see?
机会的话，
Here we have collected around 200 Hui ink sticks. You will also see the ancient paintings.
这东西看你自己收藏保管
For one ink stick, how long can it be preserved? That depends on how much care you put in the preservation. This is our ancestor, the founder of Hu Shenwen Ink Factory. After he settled in Huizhou, he followed Guanxi and started the factory together. The history of our factory started here after he had his seventh son in 1874. This factory was established, and from the beginning it's called an old store of Hui Inkstone. These are the pseudo-ancient ink stick. There are also some old wood mold. There are different styles of wood mold. Actually, the major styles, there are 3. Where is the most precious ink stick in the factory? It's actually this one. This set of ink sticks, it's very precious. We use authentic gold and silver to decorate these ink sticks. If you look at the sculpture and engrave of the ink sticks, they're all very exquisite. For this set of ink stick, is it the only one here? Yes, because we stopped making this kind of wood ink sticks 40 years ago. I don't know how many left in the world. Are you going to sell this set of ink sticks? No, because this is the most valuable ink stick left in our factory. If it is broken, it will be very difficult to restore. For example, this set of ink sticks is also very valuable. You see that there is calligraphy, poems, patterns. This kind of design and sculpture techniques has gone to the zenith that no one can reach. I heard that there is one set of ink sticks that is also preserved in the Forbidden City. Yes, it's actually this one, but the one in the Forbidden City is a little bit different from the one we have here. What is the oldest ink sticks? These are all very old. However, we cannot differentiate the times or that we make these ink sticks. The older the ink stick is, the more collectible value it has. If it is from Ming or Qing dynasty, the collectible value is really high. In today's live streaming, we have seen the making process of Hui ink stick, and now we are at the Museum of Hui ink stick. We have a basic understanding of the making of Hui ink stick. In tomorrow's live streaming, we will continue our trip in the making of 4 treasures of the study, and we will look at the making of Shen brush.
就结束了，也欢迎您明天上午10点钟继续跟我们一起来关注国家级非遗宣笔的制作过程。
Now it's the end of today's live broadcasting. We also welcome you to stay tuned with us tomorrow to see the making of Shen brush.
我叫石生娟，我一辈子只做一支笔。我的祖辈就是做这支手艺，传到我这来已经是第6代到第7代了。这种手艺呢比较铺张。
My name is Susan Jin.
耐得住寂寞。
I have been making brushes for my whole life, and I am the 7th generation or descendant of this brush making technique. To make a good brush, you have to be very patient and integrate. There are more than 100 steps in the whole making process. We also have 4 moral characters in the making of the brush. Shen brush has 2,000 years history, and currently there are more than 300 varieties. We are still continuing the technique that has 2,000 history. It is a part of Chinese traditional culture. I've never done anything else, and I have dedicated myself in the making of Shen brush. To pass on the legacy of our ancestors is my ultimate goal. I will continue to do so, and I try to do best